Hey there, I'm Shyfoxx, and in this video I'm going to show you guys how I drew the background for this Okami fox. I get a lot of questions about how to do backgrounds, so let's talk about that today. And previous to this video, I've done 3 others, one on the sketch, exactly how I did the sketch. It was a draw along with me, same with the line art, and same with the coloring for this. So now we're up to this point where I finished the background, so instead of drawing along with me, I'm actually just going to break it down layer by layer because I'd previously just finished this, didn't think I was going to do a tutorial on it, but yet here we are. You guys are asking me how I made it, so let's talk about it anyway. So this I've done in Clip Studio Paint, and what I've got for you right here is the finished artwork, and my plan was to break it down by layers and turn them all off except for the ones we need. So we don't need that. We're just going to leave our little character there, because we created this background after the fact with our character there. So I'm gonna leave our character there. So I'm just gonna collapse those. We have the folder with our character, and this red section is all the folders for our background. So kind of in reverse order, I'm going to turn these off. And I'm gonna talk about each one, talk about brushes, and everything I can think of to help you. Now, going back a little bit, the one glitch in showing you this is I realized this layer, my last layer here, the most bottom layer, which is usually just a flat color and then I do some painty things on it, is already a bit merged together. So my plan was actually to show you how I did this. So I'm gonna steal the colors off of this. I'm gonna take this, and I've got a new layer here, new canvas, not layer. And I'm just going to show you exactly pretty much exactly how I did it. I had a reference image of a concept of background lighting and colors. It had this like light green and it had this like bluey color, and I really liked that. So all I did, let's start with the light green, is I found a brush that had some texture to it. The ones I'm using now, actually I got off the Clip Studio assets, so those are easy enough to find, and literally just find one you like, play with it, because every brush kind of operates a little differently, and I went in and kind of did something like that. A good concept is to have like lighter colors towards the middle, darker towards the bottom. Like this is a really general guide for like a nature scene. I took blue, and this is just a really basic, oh, wrong brush, idea of how I did this. So we're just getting a really general idea, and we're not going to take our time, but I'm going to explain the rest to you. So kind of brushy this in, looking at the reference and deciding how we like that. So I'm just going to stop there. And what I did after this point, everything's kind of on one layer, is I went filter blur, and I don't know how to pronounce this, Gaussian blur, I think. And this is on a different monitor, pull this down, and to a degree, blur that out a little bit. Let's say there. So that kind of gives me my base. As you can see, mine ended up more like this. So that's pretty much exactly how I did it. Maybe a slightly different textured brush than this one. I like the way it showed up in here. And I played with it for a lot longer than that, kind of organizing the blocks of color and blotchiness, but because it's kind of an abstract thing, you can really just make it up. But a reference image to kind of build your placement of the light colors and your dark colors and the colors in general is really good to get you going with that. So after this point, I added a little more. I added some more dark. So I'm just going to turn this off and on. That was the following layer. I left it unmerged. I left it all pretty well unmerged so that I could show you. So we added some dark, and then we added some more dark here, some more textury, and looks blurred in as well. The blur thing gives a concept, like a little bit of a depth perception feel, more realistic feel to do that, and then we add some other things in later. So it looks like I have lightened up around the character. So there's like this light green. I'm just turning it on and off, as you can see, to show you the difference. So that would have been done with like an airbrush. I would have taken like a light lime green color and just kind of airbrushed that in. It kind of makes the character pop out, undo. Makes the character pop out. So that's all I did. Airbrush has its place. And then it looks like I went and did some more darkening. As I progressed, I'm like, yes, I'd really like to make my character pop out more and more, enhance some of the dark areas of our background. And so that's what we did. And then we needed a shadow, and these two layers ended up merged. I'm not really going to question it. We have a shadow, and that I would have done with I tend to like to use the G pen for, can I change my brush size? Why isn't it letting me? My pen is acting funny. That is great. That is perfect. Right in the middle of a tutorial. Okay. I'm just going to use my mouse a little bit. You can draw with a mouse. So anyway, I grabbed a darkish color and I just kind of drew that in. And then one of the things I like to do is use a airbrush again, and maybe even turn on the coloring with transparency. And we can, oh, wrong layer. This is awkward. And just kind of fade it out, fade it towards the edges. This is a bad example, but it looks best in the example I have here. That opacity slider is fantastic for fading out shadows to the degree that you want it faded. And then I started doing these fully opaque, one color, little leafery. Oh no, there's that word again. That goes back to my Twitch streaming days when we made up a word called leafery and I never really got rid of it. So leaf, what's the actual word? Greenery, probably. Some greenery bits. And more of those little leafy bits. And some grass. So one layer at a time. Really, it's just G-pen, stick, raindrop shapes. Pretty straightforward. And some grass, which is just more G-pen with a airbrush. So I turn on the lock transparent pixels if I'm going to do some kind of gradient on them. So if this is turned on after I've drawn my grass, I can take different colors and like lighten the tips. So I had them lighter towards the top and darker towards the bottom. And this is an epic exaggeration of what's here. That looks terrible, but I'm going to undo all what I have there, and you can still see that the tips of the grass are lighter than the ends of the grass. So that's all I did there. And little blobs that are, this is kind of an abstract thing again, blobs that in my mind were representing the shadows of the rocks. So the rocks are going to come up somewhere. I probably drew the rocks first. Actually, I know I did. I drew the rocks first and then put the shadows in, but naturally the shadows have to go underneath. And since we're going in order of layers upward, a little awkward to teach you this way, but just bear with me. We'll get to the rocks in a second. More leaves, greens, whatever you want to call those. What layer is this? Ooh, grass. So all I did here was take a more, it almost looks like an airbrushy brush, and just did some strokes to just add in some texture, some varying sizes. Nothing crazy here. I might have even used the pencil tool. Pencil tool would work really nice here. Some brushy effects going on. And that's all I did, adding in some grass and even some darkening. It looks like airbrush dark here, just around various areas. So turn that on and off so you can see the difference before and after. And there's the rocks I was talking about, as promised. Okay, there they are. I'm not crazy. So the rocks are there. And I'll admit the job done on these rocks was not like perfect, but that's kind of the great thing about this whole thing is the artwork wasn't really about the background. That's why I wasn't even going to record it. I was like, whatever, we'll just throw together a background, which is what I did. And so the rocks almost look like they're floating because the shadows are like awkwardly beneath them. But I was just like, whatever, we're just gonna do it. And so the shadows probably could have been placed a little better. And where is my shadow layer? I want to find it because I think I can show you what I mean. Here it is. I'm just gonna drag it. So if you some of them, if you just pulled it closer to the rock, it might look a little more realistic because they kind of look like they're hovering right now. Oh well. And onward. So then I added some more leaves, kind of grass leaves like coming towards, and we're framing our artwork. So this was done intentionally to make it seem like the camera person, if this was a photo, would be taking the picture through these leaves and they're kind of framing. So that's a composition thing, pointing towards our character intentionally, not random strands in this case. Everything's kind of framing our character, which is on purpose. And these have been blurred out. So all I did was I took a color, lighter than that. The leaves in the front were lighter than the background colors. So with our pen, is my pen working? This is like a really awkward time for my pen not to work. Oh, it's working. Okay. And it's not working again. Yikes. All right, we're literally drawing with our mouse. That's fine. For this tutorial, it is fine. So we drew a leaf, and then all we did, we found our Gaussian blur again, and I just blurred it out. That is because it's so far in the foreground, close to the camera. In photography, that's an effect you often get. So just blurring that out in the foreground. So that is that layer. And it appears that I have a clipped layer to it for a little bit of an effect. Clipping button just here so that it draws only on top of the layer below it. And I took an even lighter green and I did an effect like this with a pen tool, and then it kind of looks like I faded it out. I'm just analyzing what I did. Faded out, so I reverse color with the airbrush, and by reverse color I mean I'm using transparency to kind of erase, and that's all I did there. G pen to draw in the shape, and airbrush in transparency to kind of soften the edge. And I intentionally liked, whoops, I didn't want to turn on one of these layers, the sparkles, they can go away. Intentionally had like this line here because I want a bit of an effect there. That was just kind of an artistic choice. It didn't have to look that way. In art, it's good to have hard shadows, hard edged highlights, and soft edge shadows. And soft edge shadows and highlights is, what am I saying? Soft and hard edges of both shadows and highlights is what I'm trying to say. So I like to make sure I'm leaving in some hard edges of both. Hard edges of this shadow here makes a lot of sense, close to the character. Hard edge shadows close to our rocks. And then a hard edged highlight here. And then there's a lot of softness happening. So paintings like this are a good mix when it's a mix of both. And then we added some flowers with these the G pen again, and my color choices, you'll notice I didn't pick like the most yellowy yellow for the flowers. I didn't pick like yellow. See, this color looks like garbage in there. I mean, I guess if the flowers I was adding in were like really tiny, I could probably get away with like little yellow things. Like that would look okay. But you have to be really mindful of your colors, and when it comes to backgrounds, if it could be that you're using like really bright colors, but I feel like if you're a newer artist, it is safer to tone back your colors a lot. So as you can see, if we color pick this, the color of our flowers, both the middle and the flower petal, they're kind of an off-white and off creamy color, and our colors that I'm picking are in this section of our color palette in the grays. So you're actually a lot better to use some of those grays. So if I color pick our background, we're on this left half, grayer half of our color palette there. There is the odd place where we're actually in the middle. For some of our brighter greens happening, we're only in the middle. So it's a little deceiving, but we don't want our background to be overpowering with saturation. If our background had a dumb amount of saturation, I actually can probably show you why this is a bit of a mistake. It would look kind of insane. Oh, this isn't a very good example. Why isn't that working as expected? Aha, there. Okay, just had to move it. This looks crazy, maybe a bit excessive, but even this, if I tone it down, it doesn't look good. So be very mindful about how intense your colors are. You're much better to tone it back. So that's my little tip for you about backgrounds. There is the odd time where it really makes sense. Let's say it's a sunset and you got this intense like yellow light shining on your character. Maybe then you got a lot of like bright colors, but depending on your scene and depending if your character needs to match up with those values too, which is in a lot of cases why the background is drawn before the character. And I didn't do that this time because I was doing something cartoony and I was like, I don't really care. So in general, a lot of times when we're new artists, we'll always draw the background last, but actually it is good to draw your background before you color your character because the colors of your background shine on your character and they add color to your character, and it changes the colors and the shading of your character. So that's why it's good advice to draw that first, but I didn't do that here. So that's okay. Maybe more relatable for a lot of beginner artists who are doing it in this order. I'll do other tutorials later where the background comes before coloring the character. Okay, what did I do here? I toned down with an airbrush the color of our flowers. I made them darker. So another thing to be mindful of, not only how saturated our colors are, is like how dark some of the choices of our colors are and how light those colors are. So I was like, I want to darken these. I could have left them. This is not right or wrong either way, just a choice. Toning back those flowers meant they don't stand out as much, and that was a compositional choice. And more leaves, and it looks like this layer was a compositional choice too. I don't know if you can tell the difference of what's going on here. When I turn this off before, and then when I turn it on, we have this. Oh, that's the other way. When I turn it on, sorry, I'm a great teacher. When I turn it on, all that this layer was just an airbrushed bit of dark green. And it was going in on the sides here, and I apparently used the multiply layer because I just wanted to darken. So the purpose of this layer was simply to add some darkness framing the picture. Again, a compositional choice. Darkness on this side, airbrush, darkness on this side. Tone it back with our slider just so I could make it feel a little darker. So that's all I did, and I had it at whatever percent, about there. Great. And some of these things are like fine tuning. Didn't have to do that, but I did. And then this is the exact same thing happening here. I darkened again. So the brightness of our character being in the center and our center colors and values in there, our light in there, is standing out so much more if we add darkness around, which is what we did. And then, ooh, we're making our character pop. So this is an interesting layer, turning it off and turning it on. We have blue behind our character and in the background just making various areas pop, and I literally used the airbrush for that. So I basically found blue, airbrush, and just kind of, this is an exaggerated look at how we did that, but something like that. That's all I did. Just add in that, not that layer, some blues. And what's this one? I intensified the yellowy highlights in here. So I went and did that, framing our character once again. I thought that that would be what we should do. So I thought that really brought a little more life into this. That's what I did there. And then floaty sparkle dots, dust, particles. Particles is probably the word to use. I put some particles in of varying colors, some blue ones, some yellow ones in varying like opacities and sizes. That's just what I did there. And I just did dots clicking with the G pen in this case. I believe this was a layer I didn't actually use in the final version. It was just a brush with the opacity turned down a whole lot. Wrong layer, sorry. Boop-a-da-boop. Might as well teach you guys with the correct layer. It must be this one. Yes, we're on the right layer. So if I turn it up, you can see that's what it was. Brush layer. And if I turn it down, that's kind of what I had. I want it to seem like almost like a mist effect. I didn't love it. It's actually kind of neat. Looking at it now, I'm like, I can see what I was trying to do. I kind of like it. Sometimes I'm like, I could leave it, or I could leave it in, or I could not. It could go either way and it wouldn't make or break the piece. Kind of like it right now, but I'm pretty sure I actually left it out. So I'm just going to turn that off, and I kept the layer because I was still on the fence about it. So there you have that. And just throw the signature on it and we're done. So hopefully that kind of gave you the breakdown of the layers that made up this piece. So we really started with that flat background layer and then built onto it, putting in things like the foreground. That kind of, those foreground bits like these leaves kind of came later because it was important that these layers be on top of some of these other ones, but because they didn't overlap, I kind of added some of those other things in later. So layers are a funny thing, but that is all I have to show you with this one. And so we have a completed art. Maybe not my like most amazing tutorial ever, kind of just like a breakdown explanation of this thing, but I did promise to make it, and I wanted to make sure that I did make it for you. And if you wanted to draw along with that one, you could. You would just kind of have to pause, and you could attempt to draw along with it if you wanted. Now, all that said, I hope you enjoyed the series of 4 videos, even if this last one felt a little jumbly, I suppose. And this concludes our 4 video series on drawing our Okami Fox. So subscribe, you know, if you got any value out of this video. If you liked it, then like it, of course, and comment if you feel like it. All right. And I do more draw along tutorials that are probably better than this one, but hey, I hope still you got some value out of it, and I'll see you in another video. I hope another time. Have a good one. Happy painting. See you guys later.